you get up this morning, and I thought about this last time we spoke because, you were trying to coordinate things around your kids. And it's something that come up. And I think anybody that has kids, like that's the name of the game is things come up. But, when you get up in the morning and you've got a schedule and you open your calendar and that's what your day is, like, how do you set yourself up for success? So, here's what the game plan is for each of these respective groups, or this is how I'm going to set up some of my other coaches to, you know, provide hit the standard in terms of the development opportunity for the athletes.
For sure. Great question. We're obviously very busy. We have a lot of great staff that help out, and we're all very much on the same page. So Monday, Tuesdays, we have 3 coaches on the ice. We always start with a game to get the kids excited, get their central nervous system activated, get the compete level up. Then we'll split. We have a goalie coach out there who takes care of a scoring situation. It's super important for the players to hear what a goalie coach is teaching the goalies because we got to score. So we got to know
So
what they're.
he's talking to all the players on the ice.
So he'll have a group of 4 to 6 at a time and teaching them how to score in goalies. It's amazing. I'll usually take their neutral zone and I'm going to do a skating skill. And then we have another coach who's in the other end doing a puck skill, scoring, passing, shooting, the fundamentals there. We rotate for about 10 minutes and then we'll get back together and play another scrim to get the compete level back up. So we know that's a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday day. We're all prepared for that. We have ideas, concepts, drills all ready to go. And then on a different day when there's not a goalie coach out there, myself and another coach will do, we call them live situations. So high frequency events in hockey games, we really focus on those so the players can get really comfortable in them, get very creative in them, and rep those out throughout the season.
Give me an example of a high frequency event in a hockey game.
A cutback. Gain the zone, you can't get to the net, so you do a cutback. Now there's a lot of skating skills within that. So those Monday, Wednesday, those station days, I'm really working those, I call them ISO skills for that situation. So they kind of get those skills down or a little bit, and then we put them right into a situation where they can use it in a game. And you can literally see the light bulbs click for them. It's not me telling them what to do. It's them figuring it out on their own. And once they can figure that out, they have that skill a lot quicker than if I tell them all the answers.
So with these high frequency events, you're on the ice with these players throughout the season. How do you decide the order or sequence that you tackle each of these events?
That's probably the best part. If I had a whole year plan, that just wouldn't work. Completely honestly, we usually go a week or 2 weeks just to see what time of year it is, what events are happening more frequently. We go and watch a lot of their games in Brandon just to see if something is a high frequency event at their level compared to the NHL that we all watch. And it's staggering. It is very similar. For example, a puck behind the offensive net and both D chase. You see that every weekend in the NHL. You see that magnified in youth hockey. So we spend a lot of time offensively creating that situation, but defensively, how to not let that situation happen to them. And a lot of conversations happen with the players. Again, it's so important to ask questions and get their opinion on it instead of them just listening to us. I know they trust us, but if they can come up with the answer on their own, it just seems to click a lot quicker.
That's interesting. I was last night I was texting with Scott Wheeler from the Athletics. So right now he's putting out this the prospect rankings of each NHL team. And when I read these reports, like it used to be, like I can remember, as a kid, especially when I got into coaching, like when the Hockey News put out their draft report, I probably got every issue of that for like 20 years. But you'd read the scouting reports on players and it'd be like, skating, shooting, compete. Like there's probably like 5 things they'd grade up. But then you go and read Scott's report and he's breaking down skills that there's maybe not even a name for them sometimes. My question would be is, if I think when we think of the fundamentals, we think of, again, skating, shooting, passing. What are the fundamentals in today's game, or what are maybe the fundamentals that exist today that didn't exist when you were a player?
For
that
sure.
Players just you need.
Whenever I speak to scouts and GMs, yeah, skating and passing and shooting are important, but they're now just expected. Everyone's expected to be able to skate well, to pass well, to shoot well. So now what's the next step? And a lot of that is hockey sense. Can they play the game? Can they play the game in any situation? You know, the term scanning. Defensive zone scanning is something that's been a hot topic. We've been teaching a lot of. Everyone loves to be in the O zone. We call it the fun zone. Everyone's always looking and wants the puck. My best example is, you probably heard it a lot. When you're a winger and you get a rim on the breakout, you're not usually happy. But if you get a rim
Yeah.
in the O zone, everything's all good because you're in the O zone. If we can have the
Yeah.
same mindset of a rim's a rim, D zone or O zone, we want that puck and we want that creativity. I think that is something that's happening now in the game. Is just anywhere on the ice we're scanning, we know what to do with the play because everyone can skate, everyone can do all that. So how do you separate yourself?
When you talk about, you'll use scanning in the defensive zone as an example. So you've got the ability to bring players on the ice, do drills. You've got the access to video. Um, you could have a one-on-one conversation with them. What are some of the ways that you found are have been successful in getting not only players to buy into that, but understand maybe the why behind that concept?
For sure. The best way I found to teach it is, let's just say we're playing in zone 3-on-3, pass to the coach. Everyone knows the game. I'll
Yeah.
have two coaches playing the game. Then I'll have two coaches, one watching offense only and one watching defense only. And that defensive coach let the players, when they come off for their rest, give them about 10 seconds to catch their breath and then go there and ask some questions. We'll also be videoing the session, so if you can ask a player a question and he doesn't quite know the answer, you can just see it in their body language. We make a note of that after the session because they're still in the rink for school. We show them the clip again, ask the question again, and then you can see them understand it. Everyone learns different. That's something we've done a really good job of. We have close to 8 different ways to teach the same skill, just depends on the individual. And it's just had a lot of success that way.
Man, that's interesting. So you got 8 different ways to teach the same skill, but when you started out, I'm assuming you had one way. So you've added ways throughout your career. Just since you've got into coaching, and I mean, I'd say you're a young guy. How have you gone about acquiring ways, tools that enhance how you teach and develop your players?
For sure, it's constantly learning. If you're not open to someone criticizing you or giving you advice, there's not much area to improve. Obviously, the coaches site is a great resource. I watch every one of your videos. I work with the Wee Kings, and we have a director of player development there, Riley Dudar. We speak daily about new ideas. My fellow coaches are all incredibly into the game and want to learn. I have a female staff was the captain NCAA, Jess Stott. I have Ryan White, lots of games in the NHL. It's a constant conversation in the coaches room. We like to create brand new situations. It's not just about me watching a coach's site and copying their videos. We do that as well, but it's always the ability to adjust and to adapt and create. And probably one of the proudest moments I had, it was about 2 weeks ago. I created a simple drill. It was a rim down low to a play in front. Well, one of the players made an adjustment on the fly, came over to me and asked if that was okay. And I said, that is way more than okay. They made it more game like. They thought of a way to adjust the drill themselves. And then this kid is in grade 7. And it's just,
Really?
imagine that kid in a game being able to adapt in a situation to make a play. It was just a really good moment where he wasn't scared to change a drill that I told him about. He felt comfortable enough to adjust on the fly. So I was very proud.
That's super cool. I think about this a lot because I can see the change in how, say, a season is structured. And I mean, there's so many factors now. I mean, NHL teams practice. I mean, a lot of teams barely practice after the All-Star break now. But I know just through conversations, for example, a lot of coaches that in their communities might get a chance to go and watch the local NFL team go through training camp, and they see how they structure their practices, and they're like, man, like these are the best of the best, and they're doing these like really basic fundamental drills, and they just everything there seems to be boiled down to reps. And I would say basketball is very similar too, with an emphasis on, it almost seems like the foundation of teaching is the fundamental skills, where in hockey, particularly at higher levels, that's like the thing you do for 10 minutes before or
Yeah.
after practice, and it's almost a bit of an afterthought. But I can certainly see that is shifting.
Yeah,
Given your experience as both a player and now as a development coach, if I handed you the keys to the Winnipeg Jets, Rick Bonus, don't worry, you're not going anywhere. But if hypothetically, how might you approach building your team, given your experience versus just having always been a head coach of a program?
for sure. So I'll just speak from a development kind of point of view. My practice would be very similar every day. There'd be 30 minutes of skills, and those skills would be fundamentals, high frequency fundamentals. We would go through those on the ice. It would be a forward and a D split. Just get the guys comfortable, almost like a prep for the practice. After that 30 minutes, we'd get a fresh flood. I think that is very underrated. A lot of teams do an hour and a half practice, then say, okay, go do some skills now. The ice is just torched. You can't do any passing. You can't do any shooting. So that's,
Bingo. Yeah.
yeah, incredibly important. And then when we get on the ice, the guys are dialed in. They've got their touches, whatever the fundamentals they want it to be. They've got their feel of their edges, feel great. And then you can go right into the concepts you want to teach in the practice, whatever that might be. If it's breakouts, if it's wingers, if it's picking up rims, those are all skills, and those are all skills we'd work on. And then we'd do a live situation where the guys or girls would struggle. There would be times where it didn't look great, and that's hockey. And we would work through those live situations. We'd ask a lot of questions. So when anyone after the practice, if you asked any of them a question and what they worked on, it would be an instant answer. It's not just, we did some flow, some passing. It was, what did we learn? What did everyone learn in this practice? And I hope everyone would be on the same page.
Yeah. Like for a sport that spends or that is so, say, connected to golf, and I mean, no competitive golfer goes on, plays around without jumping on the range and just getting their reps in. It's always amazed me because I think what you've just described, for anybody that's a non-hockey person and they heard that explanation of how you'd structure a practice, it makes total sense. So it's interesting that maybe hasn't been adopted more frequently. When you're getting feedback from your players, is that just, how do you ensure that, I guess that's measured in a way, like do you talk to the coaches and say that, hey, one coach is going to go talk to this set of players, another coach is going to talk to this set? Does that get documented anywhere, or is it just verbally, like we get in the room while we're taking our skates off and we talk as a staff and you get a feel if we've touched all the players?
For sure. So obviously very unique here at our academy. I have an Excel sheet on every student. I ask certain questions. A lot of them have nothing to do with hockey. Obviously, I can't share that information with you. So they have their
Yeah.
own profile essentially. And in that
Yeah.
profile, it is kind of how to connect with them, what questions to ask them, what are we looking for with body language. And then on the ice, we all kind of know who's who, how to touch base, get a feel for them. A lot of time, we don't even need to talk to the other coaches. We can just feel that player's energy. We've done a really good job of that here. And we do obviously talk after in the coaches room after a session. Just, I saw you talking over there with the one player. What did you guys talk about? Quick chat. I'll input that into my kind of profile database, and then we can kind of move on and adjust from there. So that's been something that we take really good pride in here, and I'm proud of it. So
That's, by the way, like that's incredible because I mean, I just a quick reminder to everybody, if you heard the schedule for Tuesday in advance, like squeezing all that in, that's not a have to do. That's doing it because it's the best and right way to do it. So that's really cool. A lot of the players that you're working with, they're in school. Fair to say most of them are teenagers.
yeah,
So there's a lot going on in their life.
yeah.
When you talk about getting a feel for their energy, how important is that in just ensuring that, I don't want to say the ice time is productive, but if you're going to get the most out of them or you're going to help them get the most out of themselves, being in touch with that. Because I mean, for any of us that can, look back on our own lives growing up, like, man, like you don't walk into any room without a lot going on in, between your ears.
Well, that's a huge one. We have conversations a lot, especially in the classroom. Our teacher is amazing. She has them journaling. She has them vision boards. They do cool downs after every
Really?
skate. They have dry lands before every skate. We're very ahead of the curve, if you want to call it in that way. So when the players, if the players are having a tough day, not only can we tell right away, but they have tools to deal with that I feel like a lot of young players don't. And the trust that we've built with them can't be stated enough. They feel they can talk to any one of us coaches if they have anything going on. We actually had a situation yesterday. You could just tell right away, kid had a tough weekend, came in, he got his journal out, and it was all good. And as proud as I am as on the ice product, these kids are getting better. That stuff is going to just help them in life so much more than the on ice. And we've done a very good job with that as well.
That's really cool. We've got a gentleman, Cody Royal, who's going to be speaking at our conference this year. So Cody's Australian, lives in Toronto. He coached Canada's national Aussie rules football program. But today he's a two-time author, and he's terms himself the second set of eyes. So he effectively works with some of the top professional coaches in the English Premier League, other sports, and he's their the person they can bounce things off of. And one thing that he talks a lot about is just the importance of reflection. And I think what you said is really just important to point out that if the leaders of the organization, if they're getting a lot of value in reflecting and journaling, writing things down, and processing what just happened and how they could enhance it or improve it, it only makes sense that the people they're leading are going through the same process, that there would be a lot of value in that. Have you always done that? Was that something that came from that you kind of pulled from your playing background, or did you just recognize that this would be valuable?
For sure. So, a little sneak peek into my mentorship I do is, I'm sure you can agree, after a hockey game, did you find it hard to go to sleep?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. You're just replaying every play, good or bad. It's hard to turn off. And that is 99.9% of all hockey players. So something that I did and I teach my clients is to write out everything you're thinking in the journal. Just free write. It could be 1 page, it could be 10 pages, because it needs to get out of here and onto paper. And my clients, as soon as they started doing that and they got it out, it was just like no problem falling asleep. So if we don't get those thoughts out of there onto something, and I always say to write, not to just text yourself, it just dramatically helps relax and get some sleep.
Tyler, what did you take in school?
Psychology.
Well, that makes all kinds of sense.
Yeah. And it's when I said like I'm constantly learning, like maybe 50% is just hockey, the rest is just life. I think everything's connected, and just finding a way just to be able to connect with people is massive. And it's been really helping at the academy, and I'm proud of it, like I've said, but it's just teaching these other nuances that I've seen players take the next step. And yeah, they're getting better at hockey, but there's a reason why they're going from like 0 to 80 instead of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Like they're just making drastic jumps with us, and they just have
Yeah.
this ability to stay here, not go up and then down. We have plans in place for them, and it's just kind of clicking right now for a lot of players, and it's awesome to see.
So, like, I think I've shared this with you. Like, when I coached junior hockey, I remember watching you play for the Brandon. I guess back then it was the midget team. It would have been
Yeah,
the U18 team. Now you guys won a national championship. Which was it still the Air Canada Cup, or was it the TELUS Cup at that point?
it was the Tellus.
Oh man, so I'm really old. You're a lot younger. So I mean, you were a really talented offensive player. How much of your approach today is rooted in maybe coaches that you had, or what would you have maybe pulled from your playing background to say, hey, like as much as the game evolves, here's the stuff that I want to ensure stays consistent or
So
works.
probably the biggest thing I've taken from, especially that year when we won nationals. Currently in Brandon, the U18 team is undefeated. They probably have the best team they've ever had, and they're on
Really?
that path of having potential.
How many
Um,
of those kids did you went through your program?
Almost all of them are currently there. Yeah, pretty much all
Wow.
of them. Yeah,
Wow.
it's pretty cool. Then there's 4 or 5 of them listed by the Wheat Kings, which I also work with. So I always bug those kids. I'm like, you better not get sick of me, because you got 5 more years. So
Yeah, no
it's
kidding.
yeah. But the thing that I was taught, and it's just clicked with me, and I'm teaching them all right now. Is I was one of the top guys and I got a lot of attention, and when Teebs would try to get me off my game, or back then you could I'd try to hurt a guy, it
Yeah.
was, he said, take it as a compliment. It means that they are so worried about you that they have a team conversation about how to stop you. And every time someone does that or says that or anything along those, if you can take it as a compliment in your mind,
Great way to frame it.
yeah. So there's a lot of good players on the team right now. So that's what I'm always saying. There are a lot of compliments tonight. I saw, oh, you should feel good about yourself. And then now they're smiling instead of being so mad that a guy just kind of followed them around the rink for a while. And that is learned a lot, but that is one thing that I feel just really clicked with me. And now I'm able to pass that knowledge on, and it's working nicely.
A little bit unique in Brandon because the major junior team there, while they can take players from they got a pretty big footprint to draw from. I think the Weekends have always been a team where there's been a lot of Manitobans and specifically a lot of hometown kids on the
Yeah.
roster. You being one of them. But when you just describe that now you've got kids that are coming up in minor hockey, they're getting a chance to work with you, then they get kind of into the academy, then they can go into sort of the local minor hockey U18 program, and then potentially up to the Wheat Kings. And this is less about it being about you, but just about that process where you can just sort of visualize that there's these kids are on a pretty consistent plan. The language is probably the same, the philosophies are the same. How how much does that influence development? Because that's kind of a tough thing to measure, put on a stat sheet. Like that's just planning.
Yeah. So we're very lucky in Brandon to have such a great relationship with Hockey Brandon. I'm also the like development coordinator for skills with all of that. I work really closely with Matt Calvert, who's in a position on the board now to help with the development. And
Oh
our
yeah.
and our goal moving forward is to, if we could work U18 down, just because obviously the Wheat Kings aren't part of Hockey Brandon, if we could have what they need to have by U18 to make that team the best as possible and work our way down, so we're all on the same page. We all want kids to have those fundamental skills to play that certain way. I think it would be amazing. The best result or best example I have is Detroit and Grand Rapids. Whenever someone gets called up, it's just they know exactly what they're doing. They play the same game, they play everything the exact same, so they're able just to like jump in. And if someone's playing U13 AA and they make U15 AAA, I don't want the coach of U15 AAA to start back at square one. I want him to
Yeah.
know what these kids are capable of so he can go right into what he wants to teach. I think it would save months of their time, and the players could get better quickly and the team could have great success. And then once they make that jump to U18, the coach already knows all these players have these skills and these concepts. So now he can take it one step further. And then you can imagine when players go from U18 to their junior team or their dub team or wherever they end up, if they have all these skills and all these knowledge of how to play, those next coaches are going to be pretty happy and they're going to get chances in these situations because they know how to play them all. And I think that would be how Brandon as a whole keeps developing players to the next level.
For sure. No, that makes all kinds of sense. Um, what might be some examples like when you're working with players and I guess it probably differs depending on what their position is, but um, what might be an example of a skill where you're like, hey, like this is a pretty easy tweak that probably yields some big results in a player's game, and whether that's a specific mechanic within a skill or perhaps as a high frequency event where you might say to a coach like, hey, if you can focus on this area, this is going to yield some quick results in the individual game or perhaps even the teams.
For sure. I'll give you a few examples. The first one, we call it a trace foot. So if you're just doing an inside edge drill, super simple warm up, but say
Yeah.
your right foot's on the inside edge, this left toe,
Okay.
either the steel or the toe cap, should remain on the ice. It completely changes how the player feels. It completely changes how hard they can cut and how much deception they can have on it. You can do it
You're
for
talking when you're just learning, like warming up,
just warming
versus
up.
the alternative is to do it on just a single skate.
Single skate or
Got it.
a trace foot. It's one of those things that as soon as you do it, it'll blow your mind, and then you actually start to see players doing it as a shift before a shot because you can trace foot hard cut or you can kind of ride that inside edge. So that is one that we teach a lot here. We actually say do a trace foot, not inside edge, and it just the kids just love it. You can see them their escapability. You can do it on a retrieval. Like I said, you can do it on a pump fake shot. You can do it backwards on neutral zone escapes. You can use it anywhere, and the players really really like that. On passing, again, simple skill. It's just that tension control of that bottom hand. You see a lot of players, they're in perfect position, but that puck comes and the puck kind of blows up a little bit. If they can learn to, if I'm using my left hand, if I can just loosen it the second before the puck comes, then you're going to hear less sound and the puck's going to cushion with just like within a 3 inch radius. So tension control and passing is incredible. That's something that we kind of just noticed with a couple of our kids, and now we teach it from pros down to U9. And then with shooting, rotation and the ability to drop to create power. Those are the two things we really
Great.
focus on. So one is if you think about a baseball player or a golfer, you use your whole body to rotate. And then the other one is if you can drop straight down onto your stick and let that stick use its technology. Those are like the two main ways to shoot a puck with us when you have possession of the puck.
Got it. As opposed to a one timer or
Exactly.
deflection. Yeah. Got it. Got it. When you work with in the summertime, when the pros come back to town and you get on the ice with those players, what if you noticed, say, in the last couple of years, has there been anything that do you notice any trends, I guess, where they come back and maybe it's one year, it's like, hey, I really got to focus on this area, or do you see that they're maybe getting feedback, be it from their coaches or their development staff to say, hey, we need to, whether it's they need individually or just as a whole, some trends in player development.
Yeah, we always get some feedback from coaches and GMs of what they want to work on, but we watch a lot of video on them and we pick up our own trends. And for example, Travis Sanheim last summer, we call it a default setting. So he always shot off of his left leg. He's a lefty, so his inside leg, that was his
Yeah.
default shot. And he sometimes wouldn't believe us that he's doing it so much. So we'd video it, and we really focused in on him shooting off of his other leg until I asked him to shoot a puck. He shot it, and he didn't know what leg he shot off. So it became just now he's got one or two, and that is a very established NHL player. And he added a brand new weapon, and that new weapon gave him like a new sense of confidence. And he was shooting the puck very, very different in a good way by the end of summer. And obviously, he's having a great year this year. And it was just adding little pieces. Everyone thinks an NHLer comes and it's just like a whole bunch of fancy stuff. It is the tiny little details that they want to add and switch and execute and get into their game. And those little details make such a difference. And that was just a good example.
That's great. And so I can appreciate that what you just described there, pro player. I don't know what Travis makes, but I mean, in all fairness, I mean, you got a Ferrari that's showing up in the summer to
Yeah.
get tuned up,
Yeah.
right? And you know, obviously, if what you just described, helping a player add some tools, improve their game, that's got to feel great. The flip side of that is you might do something where Travis calls you in October and says, "Hey Tyler, like I don't have a goal yet. Like my shot feels all wonky. Like what did you do to me?" Um, how have you approached when you're working with players that are world class? Obviously, they've got a ton of habits and mechanics ingrained in them. When you're going to maybe take them outside one of those with the purpose of you know making a step forward, how do you maybe approach taking one step backwards to take three forwards?
For sure. Video, you need to have the clips, you need to have the proof, if you want to call it.
Yeah.
I know for example, Travis, he trusts me, but if I can just have a clip of him or a clip of another player that we want him to play like or similar to in the NHL, using this skill, their buy in is instant. Like those guys, the difference, they are so dialed in. Every ice time is a chance to get better, and they don't waste a second. Their compete level, their focus is just out of this world. And if you have just that proof of why and when and ask questions and they get to chime in, then there's never an issue with there's never a no. No thank you. No, it's let's do this now.
And how so you get these players for this summer, and I'm assuming that that's probably somewhere between 6 and 8 weeks where they're on the ice. Could you give any, and again, this is an inexact science, and I don't want to put you in a tough spot, but I'd just be curious to know when it comes to working with a player like, say, Travis, NHL player, and you're trying to build a new skill or habit within their game, the amount of reps or time that a coach should allot to that player versus, say, a U18 player or a U12 player, and just how, because I think so often, you know, coaches, they do a drill and it's like, I don't get it. Like, they're not, why aren't they doing it in a game? And it's just the appreciation that, as as you said, when you build that season plan, it's one thing that you gotta create the space for those skills to grow.
You do. And there's that learning model of you got to do A, B, C, D, E, F in order. And it's common. It's been in hockey forever. And one of your presentations on your site, the gentleman from the German Ice Hockey Federation, how he said,
Oh, Carl. Yeah.
yes, that type, you'll see rapid learning, but you'll see rapid forgetting. And if they can't figure it out, if it's just laid out for them, they have to come back and do it all over again. And it's a great business model, but we would just like to get the kids better at hockey quickly. So we do a unique on ice program in the summer. For example, they'll skate for 1 hour and we're going to ISO those skills, whatever skills we're deciding on. We're going to get a flood and then they're coming right back out on the ice and going right into live situation competition drills where it's our job as coaches to bring out those behaviors. How do we get that skill we just taught them without telling them to do it? We want them to figure it out. We want them to self-organize their body in a situation that they use those skills. And once they do that, then it's there. If they did it without them knowing it, they have that skill now. And that's our whole goal in the summer. They still get their ISOs and then they go right into that situation and they only skate twice a week. So they still get to be kids. They still get to work out on other days, go to the lake and have family time. And it's just going to work really well.
Man, you know what? So the thing I miss most about coaching, well, the thing I miss most about coaching is just being in the room around the players and the whole camaraderie. But the thing I miss the second most is probably what you and your staff go through every day, where you say, we have to create an environment to teach this, and you get in a room and there's the whiteboard, and you spend an hour figuring this thing out and creating something, whether that's a practice plan or a small area game or a teaching progression.
Yeah.
Um, that's the fun stuff. Can you give any examples of, maybe not so much the drill itself, but just like take us inside that process, and how do you, I imagine it's equally important in your role that, just like you get the players' feedback, you got to get coaches' feedback as well.
For sure. So let's talk scoring. Scoring's fun. Everyone loves doing it. The best way to score in hockey is making an east-west, so lateral pass. Guys term it the golden road in front of the goalie. I'm sure you've heard that
Yeah.
term. So
Yeah.
how do we get those players to do that more, but also be able to catch that puck and shoot it? So you want to create a situation where that's the objective, but not the only one. So now we have one goal, east-west pass. Second goal is to catch it and shoot it really quick. And then, so how do we create situations where they're doing that? Maybe continuous, maybe not, and then go from there. That's where the conversations happen with the coaches. We have setups we use a lot that have worked the best, but how do we just tweak those setups to make it a different skill? How do we make it a
Sure.
north-south pass? How do we make it a delay cutback into an east-west pass? How do we get them to two-touch the shot instead of one touch because the pass is behind them on their strong side? There's just little nuances that you got to switch while keeping the setup the same so we can save time on the ice. That's kind of how we go about creating new or different live situations.
Do you keep score a lot in practice or in these training sessions?
You have to. You have to have, especially in academy where the kids are out there with all these with each other for 5 days a week. You got to keep it competitive, and it's incredibly crucial for that.
And that was going to be one of my questions too. Like, I think, just in conversations with a lot of coaches in your shoes, that again, when you don't have that team care, you don't have that, you're not influencing say their ice time, that, traditionally, like, it seems like, everybody talks about, like, the hockey stick curve in the right way in terms of progress. Well, there's sometimes in this environment it can go the opposite way, where you start out really hot, everybody's engaged, but then the season's a grind for everybody. And then at the tail end, like I know friends that coach in academies where, the season ends in March, but they have to keep going on the ice
Yeah,
until June of the school year. And they're like, that is just, you're on fumes at that point, trying to keep everybody engaged. And any tips that you found, like, and just the time of year we're at, great example, how to keep it fresh and keep that energy going.
for sure. So I would say first thing, put ownership on the players. So we start every skate with 3-on-3 pass to the coach. They make the teams
Every
before
skate.
every skate. So everyone knows that's happening. We're ready to go. They make the teams every time. So you got to remember back in the day when kids were at school and you're picking teams, the teams were always fair. So you put it on them to make fair teams, and you see them in the stands. Okay, who is everyone here today? Did anyone come? Okay, what are the teams? They come on the ice. They get one team gets their pennies on, and it is so fun. That first 10 minutes, those kids are going as hard as they can, and we have yet to have a time when that first game isn't so competitive. So think about being that competitive in the first 10, 15 minutes and then trying not to be for the rest of practice. It's impossible. So that's why we'd love to start it with that game and put the ownership on them to have the teams ready. And then once that's done, it is everyone's go time. It is go time the rest of practice.
So is one of the chapters in Tyler Dittner's book on coaching is like, if you can start out with a bang, like the rest can kind of take care of itself. But just every practice, make sure the first start with a banger.
100%. And something we talk about is the coaches need to be similar, like a battery. I need to be fueling these kids. So when they're playing, like I am yelling, I'm screaming. It is fun. They need to get energy from me. I don't want to be draining these kids because maybe I'm tired. Maybe my daughter was up at 3 a.m. Like that doesn't matter to them. They need to
Yeah.
feel that from me. Then they'll feel it from each other. And then all of a sudden, every skate is just such an opportunity for them to get better. And once they're done their skate, I send them to the classroom and now they're ready to learn. Now they're fired up. They're not tired. They're just dialed in. And it's just been a great flow that way.
This is unrelated to coaching in a way, but you've kind of referenced this indirectly a few times. I spend, man, I wish I had your gig. I stare at a computer screen and talk to people like 8 hours a day. And I find like some days, especially where we live out here in the West Coast, for anybody that's out here, like there's a period in the Pacific Northwest where there's like 4 months where it is dark and gray and rainy and cold, and it gets to you.
Yeah.
And then you get to Friday and you just feel like crap. You're like, man, I haven't been outside yet today. Like, I haven't moved my body this week. How? And then we hear all the stuff that's coming out with kids, mental health, etc. They're all glued to these things. I'm holding up a phone for anybody that can't see. How? Forget the hockey part, just the part of like
Yeah.
bridging physical activity, enthusiasm with learning and education. How valuable is that?
It's incredible. So our schedule, I'll just walk you through our normal day for our oldest group. So they get there at approximately 8:30. They hand their cell phones in, so they don't have them all day. So check one
Oh,
of no
smart.
screen time.
Yeah.
Then they get changed and they have dry land. So we have a certified trainer, Paul. He's amazing. This month they're working a lot on just the hand speed with shooting. So legs are getting a bit of a rest and they're just figuring that part out. After they've already got exercise, they pick their teams, they go on the ice. So now we're getting to compete, like I just said. Now they're working, now they're getting better. They finish that. They have a cool down for 10 minutes. I pick a new student every single skate to who's running cool down. There's just a habit that I hope sticks with them the rest of their lives, that they just
Yeah.
always cool the body down. Knock on wood, we haven't had any like hip injuries or anything with the amount of skating we're doing. So that has been great this year. So from there, now they have some lunch, they do some reading, and then they go to the classroom. And you got to think
You do
all that.
some reading. Is that just because they don't have a phone, or is that like it's reading time?
It's reading time. Yeah. And they have 30
Whose
minutes to read.
idea was that?
Our teachers, yeah, amazing. And they love it. They truly do love it. And then think about how much, like you said, the exercise, the lack of screen time, the having to compete, the getting asked questions on the ice, and then they go and then they're just ready to learn. They're not tired. They're just their bodies and their brains are just primed for that chance to learn. And we've had just great. success with that. So that's been a really nice setup.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
You're going to be presenting at the Global Skills Showcase, and like we see so many presentations through the application process, and I don't have a problem saying yours might be the best one, or at least I've come on the call and I've been like, holy smokes, like, it was so impressive, the level of detail, the video, etc. How you laid that out. And I remember getting off that call. I'm like, this probably wasn't because we're special. This is, my sense was, how Tyler does everything, um, which is, again, just really cool. Can you maybe touch on what you're going to be presenting on, because it's different, and I don't even like, I'm not even confident that I could frame the question the right way to pull
Yeah,
it out. So I'll just hand the baton to you.
for sure. So to describe it the best way, I kind of touched on it earlier, is creating power with rotation when it comes to shooting. It's really, really benefits younger and then smaller players. So someone like Jack Hughes, Quinn Hughes, Elias Peterson on Vancouver, they all do it very well. If you don't have the mass to create a lot of power like Ovechkin, you need to figure out
Sure.
another way to do it. And again, we all watch a lot of video. I was really into the scoring situations for a while, and I kept seeing the same type of rotation. And the whole presentation is going to be on rotating the lower body one direction, spinning the upper body the other direction, and then using that really, really quickly, and with NHL examples and how to break down the skills within that, warm those up, and then go into it. And something I'm super excited for coaches to see is I'm going to break video down of the presentation for them to see in the presentation. So it's not just the videographer kind of showing it live. I video with my iPad, and then I'm going to voice over and show them all the little skills. So whoever tunes in and watches, they can just use that session that night or that day. That's my goal for this presentation. And I hope everyone enjoys it.
I'm stoked. I like, when I first read like your application, I was like, this might turn out to be like the biggest gimmick of all time. But then as soon as I didn't even recognize it until you started taking me through the clips, and I'm like, oh my god, like, I see this all the time.
See it
And
all
games.
the
Yeah,
time.
and really, yeah, totally. Um, Tyler, like, I'm sure throughout your career, there's been opportunities. Brandon's your hometown. I know you started in Winnipeg and moved back, but why not, wear a suit to games and stand behind the bench and make that the focus? Why stick with the player development?
It's a great question. I get asked that daily. I really enjoy getting the trust from the players when they know I'm not in control of their ice time. It's a whole different relationship that way. There's something a lot of people confide in me a lot, and I'm not sure why. To be honest, I get a lot of people who just want to reach out and talk, and I take pride in sharing that, or not sharing that information, I should say, keeping that between myself and them. And I just feel that is potentially my calling, and I want to just help players get better, and hopefully with the skills I can give them and the tools I can give them, their coaches who are in charge of their ice time are able to give them a little bit more. That's how I feel at the moment. That could change if you ask me that question again in a month, but that's my current mindset.
That's awesome. That's a great way to wrap up. Tyler, we're again really excited to have you present and share your presentation with our community at the Global Skills Summit. And it's been great getting to know you. And thanks for taking time today and sharing a bit about your journey so far.
Perfect. Thank you for having me.